starts with a woman narrating a bedtime story to a little girl. She begins with our Cinderella, or in this case, Zolushka. She works as a housekeeper for a rich family with two insufferable daughters, Polina and Zinnia, our lovely stepsisters. Their mother, the evil stepmother, has hair that could rival Goku's, while their father looks like Sherlock Holmes from Temu. The whole family is trashy, literally. They made their fortune building a dump site. However, this dump site sits on protected land, which they've known from the start, and now they're on the brink of financial ruin. Much like the classic tale, there will be a ball, but this ball takes place in an exclusive nightclub for the elite. At this point, the movie briefly breaks the fourth wall as we see the little girl interrupt the story to ask about the prince, where we finally see him in the flesh. Maybe a little more flesh than we're used to. On the stage, we can see Alexei Korolevich. He's a pop star with millions of fans. Yes, you heard that right. Our prince is a celebrity singer. His producer, worried about his career, suggests he marry to keep the public intrigued, an idea that horrifies Korolevich. Meanwhile, Cinderella is a devoted fan of Korolevich. Like any fan, her ultimate dream is to meet him in person. But to attend the ball and see him, she needs an entry ticket. Her evil stepmother happens to have one and gives it to her. But as expected, there's a catch. Cinderella has to work for it. Despite her efforts, she loses the ticket almost immediately. We also meet Pasha, the page boy in this modern fairy tale. He's the nightclub's administrative manager, a hardworking guy with his own storyline. It turns out he has a long-standing grudge against Chugainov, the Russian oligarch who represents the king in this version. Chugainov, who is the king here, is not like other oligarchs. He is closer to us peasants. He chugs vodka with no sense of restraint and then dominates the dance floor, like your typical uncle at every big family gathering. Cinderella's desperation to see Korolevich leads her to her aunt, the fairy godmother. But this godmother isn't your average magic wand-wielding savior. She's the editor-in-chief of a tabloid magazine. You know the type: flashy, clickbaity, filled with half-truths, gossip, and outright lies. When Cinderella asks for her aunt's help sneaking into the ball, the fairy godmother initially brushes her off, accusing her of being a fan. Eventually, she agrees, but on one bizarre condition: Cinderella must take a photo of a unique birthmark on Korolevich's bare backside. Yes, his bare backside. You see, this birthmark, a crown-shaped one no less, will supposedly prove his royal lineage, so they just need a photo of his bare ass. For the birthmark, of course. What else for? Desperate to meet her idol, Cinderella reluctantly agrees. She has until midnight to get the photo before it's sent to the tabloids for print. Meanwhile, the stepmother and her daughters catch wind of Korolevich's potential royalties. They're determined to make one of the stepsisters his bride. After all, marrying into royalty is their only way out of bankruptcy. The exclusive ball finally begins. King shows up dressed, appropriately enough, as a king, mistaking the event for a costume party. His dramatic entrance leaves everyone stifling laughter. Cinderella also makes a stunning entrance, capturing everyone's attention. Among those mesmerized is Pasha, who stops her to ask for her ticket and name. Unfortunately, she came under a fake identity and can't even remember the name she used. Before Pasha can press further, Korolevich swoops in with his pop star charm, whisking her away. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a chance to put in a sentence before his producer meddles in and drags him away. Pasha again grows in front of her. He says that he knows she doesn't have a ticket, and instead of kicking her out, asks her not to cause any drama indirectly, implying that she's here for some sugar. But at some point manages to lose his chain of thoughts. Deeply insulted, Cinderella shoves her ticket in his face. Pasha quickly backtracks, apologizing, but not without a cheeky flirtatious grin. He watches her storm off, clearly fuming but undeniably radiant. Determined to remember her mission, Cinderella sets her sights on Korolyovich. Her goal? Sneak backstage and snap a photo of his infamous birthmark. With newfound resolve, she tries to flirt her way past security, only to be stopped by Pasha yet again. Her awkward attempts fail hilariously when Pasha intercepts her, teasing her about her Hollywood tactics, meaning that this only would work in the movies. He suggests she could have just asked nicely, which she eventually does. In front of the dressing room door, she gets nervous and flees, leaving Pasha to deal with her mess. When he confronts her, she admits to chickened out and says that he would too if he met his idol, and even plays it out in front of him, drawing a fond smile on his face. Meanwhile, Korlevich's producer makes a plan to connect him with one of the stepsisters, unaware of their precarious financial situation. The stepmother, in turn, trains her daughters in the art of seduction. Back at the dressing room, Cinderella chickens out again, listing her fears to Pasha, including a random complaint about an itchy back. In a hilariously unexpected moment, Pasha offers to scratch it for her, leading to a charged, intimate moment between them. So Cinderella tries approaching Korolyevich again, but the poor girl can't even get out a full sentence before he completely brushes her off. Meanwhile, the king, absolutely hammered, starts a fight with some other oligarchs at the bar. Total chaos. Seizing the moment, Cinderella sneaks back into the dressing room and hides behind a plant. Camera ready for action. But guess what? Pasha walks in, cool as ever, sits on the sofa, and straight up asks her what she's doing there. Clearly, she wasn't as sneaky as she thought. After some awkward mumbling, she finally spills the beans. She's a journalist. Pasha doesn't hold back and starts scolding her for such a dumb idea while dragging her out of the room. Their squabble gets cut short, though, because the king is now full on smashing bottles at the bar. Cinderella, in classic schemer mode, proposes a deal. She'll handle the king in exchange for that bare-ass photo of Korolyevich. Pasha, understandably skeptical, reluctantly agrees. So, what does Cinderella do? She dives right back into her cringeworthy, embarrassing flirting tactics that didn't work the first time. Unsurprisingly, the king is not amused. He literally picks her up and starts carrying her out. But then she casually mentions her son, and the king stops dead in his tracks. He jumps to conclusions, assuming she's his son's girlfriend. Does Cinderella deny it? Of course not. She doubles down, even lying that the prince sent her to find him. Bold move. She manages to lead the king into a dusty prop storage room and locks him inside like a triumphant supervillain. Feeling like a genius, Cinderella rushes to find Pasha and proudly shows off her handiwork. Behind the door, the king is losing it. Pasha looks horrified at first, but then bursts into laughter because, let's face it, the whole situation is completely ridiculous. Still laughing, he gently pushes Cinderella away, telling her to stay safe while he goes to deal with the dragon in the storage room. Pasha takes a deep breath, swings the door open, and lets the king stumble out, landing comically in a chair. With perfect timing, Pasha drops the bombshell. Yup, the big reveal. Pasha is the prince. Turns out he and his dad haven't spoken in 5 years. Why? Pasha wanted independence, and his father was way too controlling. Classic parent-kid drama, but with billions at stake. The king defends himself, saying he worked his whole life to give Pasha a carefree future, and only criticized him to prepare him for the real world. It's actually a sweet moment, and they finally reconcile. The king, in high spirits, heads back to the dance floor, and then he spots Cinderella. She doesn't see him at first, but when she does, she looks ready to defend herself with a shoe. But instead of getting angry, the king surprises her by giving her warm kisses on the cheeks. Cute, right? Well, Not for the producer, who's been lurking in the background watching all of this unfold. He hilariously assumes that the king's son is actually his daughter and that Cinderella must be the princess. Naturally, he orders Korolyovich to seduce her. Later, Pasha finds Cinderella, ready to tell her the truth about his dad. But Cinderella, being Cinderella, interrupts him first and asks how he's planning to get the prince's pants off. She still thinks Korolyovich is the prince. Before Pasha can explain, Korolyovich shows up and dedicates a song to Cinderella in front of everyone. He even invites her to the stage for a dance, which Pasha watches from the sidelines, clearly fuming with jealousy. The king, ever the romantic, sits next to Pasha and teases him, pointing out the jealousy in his eyes. Pasha tries to deny it, but the king isn't buying it. He reminisces about how crazy he was for Pasha's mother and reveals that he still wears their wedding ring after all these years. It's a nice father-son bonding moment amidst all the chaos. Meanwhile, Korolyovich takes Cinderella out to the terrace and leaves to grab drinks. But on his way, he runs into Cinderella's stepsisters, who gleefully spill the tea about her true identity. Back on the terrace, Cinderella is convinced she's finally getting her fairy tale ending. She even says this to Pasha, who shows up just to kill the mood with his not-so-subtle jealousy. She quickly realizes he likes her and can't stop laughing, which only makes him sulk off. Korolyovich returns, but the vibe is off. He calls Cinderella by her real name, revealing that he knows everything. And then the mask comes off. He's not the charming guy from TV. He's angry, threatening, and even raises his hand to hit her. Luckily, Pasha steps in to stop him. Things escalate, and Pasha hilariously spills a drink on his pristine white pants, leaving a giant green stain. In the aftermath, Cinderella admits she's naive and reckless, and Pasha admits he's an idiot. They're about to kiss, finally, but nope. Classic interruption. Korolyovich storms onto the stage with the stepsisters, who pull their ultimate prank. Right in the middle of his performance, they lift the hem of his cardigan, exposing his bare cheeks to everyone. Turns out, Pasha had cut up all his pants earlier and left him with no options. Savage. Cinderella doesn't waste the opportunity. She snaps the photo just as the clock strikes midnight and bolts out of there before Pasha can stop her. By the next morning, Korolyovich's career is basically over. The world now knows he's not the prince, and since his entire brand was built on that lie, he's toast. As for Pasha, he refuses to go looking for Cinderella, calling the whole find the girl who fits the shoe thing ridiculous. But his father, ever the romantic, has other plans. He finds Cinderella's address, drags Pasha into the car, and insists they at least try to get to know her. Meanwhile, Cinderella is kicked out by her stepmother and, as if things couldn't get worse, gets hit by a car. And then we get the twisty ending. The woman insists that Cinderella and Pasha have never met and lived happily ever after but separately. She then tells the girl to close her eyes because her parents have come home and she's still awake. When the parents walk in, we see that it's Prince Pasha and Cinderella. Turns out they did meet, got married, had a child, and lived happily ever after. The end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this story, because there are many more waiting to be told. See you in the next one. Bye.